So we're here on Daf Lamed Ches Amid Beis, and we got a little bit past Ella Omar Rabba, but let's go over Ella Omar Rabba, which is about 15 lines down from the top, right above Tosed Maskell Beis Hillel Omer. Idi ve'idi, both the Reisha and the Seifa, did naflak shehi nesua. So we're rejecting Ula, who differentiated between the Reisha and the Seifa. The Reisha was an Nesua and the Seifa was an Arusa. And now we're saying no. Both cases, according to Rabbah, are an Nesua. And Zikas Nesua osa suffix. And here's where we're going to introduce the principle called Ein Safek Motzi B'dei Vada, which was the last thing we discussed yesterday. Reisha, the Kaima, since she has ownership over the Nechasim, what we call the Guf HaNechasim, even if I assume that she's a Nesua, even within the framework of Nesuin, a full-fledged marriage, she owns the Guf HaKarka. Avilei, and therefore her status, and now we're talking about if she wants to sell the Karka, is Vada. She definitely has a Yad or a Chazaka in the Karka. Ve'inu, now we get to the Yavam and his Yorshim. That's already a suffix. We don't know whether Zikas Yibum creates Nesuin. On the side that it doesn't create Nesuin, he has no rights to even to the payros of the car. Therefore, we're going to apply the principle of Ein Safek Motzi B'dei Vada, that in the Reisha, her situation is, and she's alive and well, is that of a chazaka. She has a definite chazaka. Because even if the Yavam is in a Nesuin relationship, but nevertheless, she definitely owns the Guf HaKarka. That's what we said, Nuchze Malug means she owns the Guf and he owns the Peiros. His situation, on the other hand, the Yavam, is that he might not be a Baldover at all. He has no claim and no leg to stand on, because Nesuin, in the case of Zika, is a suffix Nesuin. It's therefore in Safek Motzi B'dei Vada, and she has rights to sell the Karka without his approval, and the sale is valid. Now we get to the Sefer. That's where we have a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai. And this is the case where the Yevamot died. Mesa, and now we're going to explain Beis Shammai. Halalu boim lirash, halalu boim lirash. Right. So we have the Yarshei Abal. They come to collect and to claim the estate with a taina that the Yavam has no rights because it's only a Zika and suffix Nesuin. Halalu, on the other hand, again, according to Beit Shammai, the Yarshim of the Yavam, or the Yavam himself, he comes to claim the Yerusha. So we have two competing claims to the Yerusha, and we have a suffix, who gets the Yerusha. If we would argue that Zika is Kinesua, then the Yavam is the exclusive Yorech, and the Yarshei Ha'av are out of the picture, because Baal Yorech is Ishto. However, on the side that the Zika is not Kiknusa, then the Yavam is out of the picture. He has no claim whatsoever to the to the estate, and the Yorshei Av will have the exclusive claim over the estate. So basically, we're in a mutually exclusive situation. It's either A or B. Either it's Zika Kiknusa, and therefore the Baal, the Yavam, will be Yorish Ishto, forget about the Yorshei Av. Or the opposite is true. Zika doesn't meet up to the standards in the Surah, and therefore the Yorshei Av have the exclusive rights to be Yorish this woman's property. So if we have a situation where it's either A or B, it either belongs to Reuven or Shimon, then we do Yachlok. And that's the Shita of Beit Shammai in the Sefer. Whereas in the Reisha, again, just to reiterate, she has rights to the Nechasim Mimanivsha. She's alive and well, claiming her rights to the Nechasim, because even if you would consider the Zika as Nesuin, he only has rights to Peros, but not to Gufakar. Now, what did Beit Shammai hold in the case of the Sefer? And here, he introduces Chazak. Let me just read to you a short piece here in the Masifta. According to Beit Hillel, Kevan Shebechayeh, had she been alive, Hayu Nechasim B'chezkasa, she would have claim to the Nechasim. V'huchsako hanachlo b'chezkas mishpachta. In other words, again, before she died, her situation was such, and Beit Shammai don't deny this, that she has the chazak on the karka. Now she transfers that chazak with her death over to her family, to her mishpach. Ukrovei isha, aim vade kroveha, that's certainly her krovim. Lachein ein yorshei abal yorshim esenechasim. Amidim esenechasim b'chezkasam tahainu bidei krovei isha. So again, it's really interesting. At this point, we're maintaining that even according to Beis Hillel, Zika creates a suffix Nisuin. But the Machriya, the key factor in this whole chalon, is going to be the Chefts of the Karka. The Karka itself is Muchzekes Biyad HaIsha. And Biyad HaIsha means Biyad Isha V'Krovosel. And what generated that Chazaka? The fact that there was a Miman Shach in the case where she was still alive. That Miman Shach generates, and she claims, a Chazaka to the Nechasim. So now, after her death, the Yorshei Abal, the Yorshei Yavam come along and they say, wait a minute, you're willing to admit at least the suffix that maybe Zika is Nesuin. They still say in such a case, well, the burden of proof is on you because she had a chazaka, meaning she and her heirs of Yorshei Av had a chazaka b'chayeha the moment before she died, which was based on the Miman Shach that she owns the Gufa Karka. With her death, there's nothing to undermine and neutralize her chazak. Now, again, let's just think, if there would have been a yachloku of Beis Shammai in the Reisha, it would be only a yachloku on Peros. Because even on the tzad, that the claim of the Yavam is Nisuin, all he gets in the context of Nisuin is Peros. So if there would have been a Yachlok, there's no Yachlok because ain't suffering Motzim Vada. But theoretically, if there would have been a yachloka, it would be only on the parents. However, again, the Yavam comes to be motzi half of the peros, and we're going to apply the principle of hamotzi mechavel raya because she has definite rights to the nechasim. So once we establish that the nechasim are bechezkasa, then the Yavam is a motzi mechavel of a raya. He won't even get peros. That's something that we have to emphasize, students. In other words, he was vying for half the pairs. And Chach, give me half the pairs because we have a suffix nesuin. But no, he's not even getting half the pairs because of har chazaka. And that chazaka is based on the Bimar of Shach. But the bottom line is, muchzekes, he muchzekes b'nechasim bevadai. Eisvei Abayim. So again, we have Ula, and then we have Rabbah who rejects Ula. We now have Rabbah who substitutes a new interpretation of the Mishnah, and now we have Abaye who's going to raise an objection against Rabbah. Eisvei Abaye. Ula Beit Shammai ein safek motzi midei vadai. Is this really true? That Beit Shammai adopts and accepts the principle ein safek motzi midei vadai? And that's your explanation, Rabbah, for why Beit Shammai on Moda to Beis Hillel in the Rachel when she's still alive, that the Yavam is out. But Tnan, and now we're learning a sugya in Baba Basra that's going to lead us to the exact opposite conclusion. So claims Abaye, Nafal Abayis Olav Yal Aviv. So interesting how we had a case of Apoles earlier today in Masechet Yevamot. But there was a woman and her husband. Here it's a woman and her father. Oh no, all of so it's a son and a father. All of the Al-Morisha. Or even if it's not his father, it was someone else who's a Morich, meaning like you have Reuven and Shimon. So Shimon has his father Reuven as a Morish or some other Morish. Maybe it's an uncle of his. Maybe it's his grandfather. Now, again, whenever you have the language of Nafal al X and Y, it means we don't know who died first. Hayu olav subas isha ubalcho. So we don't know who Olav is. He writes here that Olav means Allah ben. I will accept that on blind faith. The Ben has outstanding debts. He owes money for a ksuba, or he's a balchov. So again, the Ben has outstanding debts and he does not have property to pay up his debts. However, his father or another Morish, an uncle, a grandfather, whoever it is, has nechas. He possesses property. Now let's go through the two possible scenarios as to who died first. Let's say that his father died first. Again, when we say the father, it could be any Morish. Now the son, who's still alive for a few seconds, he will inherit his father. At that point, all of his debts are collectible. Why? Because he inherited a major piece of real estate from his father, from which he can pay off his debts. If, on the other hand, he died first and he never inherited his father, and now his properties are inherited by his father or by any of his other relatives, so l'chora now second. So now, why can't the creditors, not the creditors, what do they call the debtors? Why can't they come to the father and collect from the chassid? Yeah, that now are being bequeathed to the father.
He didn't have any.
So again, if he had no nechasim, so why would the creditor, not the creditor, what's it called? The creditor. I think the Baal Chov is a creditor in English. Why shouldn't the Baal Chov? So why would the Baal Chov have any claim on the father? The father doesn't have to pay his son's debts. All right, let's say it's partial. We're not discovering America. There's no claim on the part of the Baal Chov to the father. Okay, so now let's see what the contention is. Right, we have these two groups of people vying for the Yerusha in front of Bezdin. Yarshei Av Omrim, their claim is Habal Meis Rishon V'Achkach Meis Ha'av. So since the Ben died first, there's no claim on the part of the Baal Chov to collect from the father. However, the Baal Chov Omer Ha'av Meis Rishon V'Achkach Meis HaBen, it means that the moment that the father died, the Ben took over the nechasim during that split second of time that he was still alive, and now those nechasim become included in what we call the shibud, right? The lien. So now the Baal Chov claims, I want to collect from your father's nechasim, because the Yarshei Abal, the Yarshei Av are going to claim, no, it was the Ben who died first. Beit Shammai Omrim Yachloku. Now I'm going to stop here for a moment. We had a principle called Ein Safek Motzi Midei Bad. And we were assuming that even Beit Shammai adopted that principle. Can we apply that principle here? And that would be a kasha on Yachlok, right? Beit Shammai are recorded as saying Yachlok. Why should you say Yachlok? L'chora, at the moment that the Ben died, whether he died first or second, or let me say it a little bit differently. No, I don't have it. Let's see. Beis Hillel omrim nechasim b'cheskasam. Right? Who owns the nechasim for the last 50 years? It's the father. Now the Baal Chov comes along and he wants to claim that those nechasim, those very same properties, belong to him. Why? Because the father died first. Hacha Yarshei ha'av vadai ubal chov safek. Why is that? I would say a chazak. I wouldn't say vadai. Yarshei ha'av nachshavim vadai mufzakim b'nechason charein boim b'tainas Yerusha vadois. Oh, okay. So the father's gone, and his yarshim are standing in his shoes, so to speak, putting forth a claim, and they have a claim of vada. But I don't understand, why is that claim vada? Oh, so he explains. Oh, this is way more complicated than we thought. We're going back to the scenario. If Lu Yitzuru would know that the father died first, and we assumed, I mean, when I say we, that's the royal we, assume that if the father indeed, if we had two witnesses that the father died first, then the Baal Chov certainly has a claim to that Yerusha, because immediately with the death of the father, the son inherits his father. And now those properties come under the lien to the Baal Chov, are collectible. No. He says, because even if the ben died second, Mishamesa ben, Noflim Hanachasim Liadei Yarshei Ha'av. It's like a ping pong game. Right? The father died first. Those Nechasim now go to the son, which means that the Baal Chov is going to jump at this opportunity and seize the Nechasim for payment of his home. But immediately the son died. When the son dies, then the Nechasim go back to the father. But I don't get it. Why did they go back to the father without a lien? At that moment, when the son inherited his father, he now takes those Nechasim into his possession, and they are liened to pay the Baal Chov. Now, when the son dies, the father and his Yoshim are inheriting a property that has a lien on it. I don't get it. Vadai ubal chov safek. Right, and ain't something goes to the body according to our assumption. The Beit Shammai also adopt that principle, and yet Beit Shammai is saying kasi something who motes in the body. But I don't get it. What about the shibud? Is the Gemara completely, how should I say, ignoring the shibud?
Yorshim definitely.
Yorshiav?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I mean, they definitely inherit everything. There's just a question, is there a lien on it or not? They inherit it. I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, but they're inheriting something that has a lien on it. I don't get it. The very moment the father died, the chassim are transferred over to the ben, even for a split second. And at that point, the Baal Chov has a claim on those chassim.
But they inherit whatever it is. They inherit it
with the son's death.
With it, yeah.
But what happens to the claim of the Baal Chov? Why is that dissipated to thin air? Right? We have Reuven owes money.
Right.
He dies, and Shimon now his son inherits it. So the Baal Chov comes and says, "I could have collected from your father in his life. I'm going to collect from you after his death." I don't get it. But where's that claim? That claim doesn't just evaporate into thin air.
But he definitely inherited Shimon. I mean,
oh wait,
Shimon is the father. Case, yeah. Right? I mean, in this case, the Yorshim definitely inherit all of the possessions of the father.
Okay, but that doesn't undermine the claim of the Baal Chov. That's what I'm saying. Inheritance doesn't undermine a claim.
He only has a
It
claim.
doesn't
He
neutralize a
only
claim.
has a possible claim, depending upon the sequence. But they definitely inherit everything.
Yeah, but again, what significance is there to definitely inherit something when that property is now within the seizure of the Balchov? The Balchov can seize that property. Okay, he didn't get there on time. You know what I mean? But if you would freeze that one frame of that minute between the death of the father and that, then he has an absolute claim, and the subsequent death of the son is irrelevant to that. So that again, it's a suffix, but the whole thing is the whole situation here is a suffix. The fact that now the Ben dies, I don't think that should undermine the 50% claim of the Balchov.
But doesn't he have it against Yorshim, who are in possession of
the son's property, the late son's property?
Right. I mean, they have possession. He doesn't get it from the son. He's going to take it from the Yorshim. So they actually have it in their hand.
Oh, that's
And then,
you want to
and then
say
he's coming to
you're
claim.
talking about the possession. 1 second, let me just think of it. I hear what you say. Let me just. I don't know if it's right, but let me think about it. The son died. If the father died, if the son died first, then there's no claim whatsoever. Now, if the father died first, you're saying that the Yerusha, with the death of the son, creates a muhzakos. I don't like it. I don't like it. Because there's no muhzakos on something that is owed to a balchov. You can't claim muhzakos on something. In other words, let's say
that part of the estate doesn't transfer yet.
It's lien. Again, I use the word lien, but I think it's an appropriate concept. Maybe it's not lien, it's shubot, whatever word you want to use. I mean, again, if the Balchov would have jumped in at that point between the death of the father and the death of the son, he would have taken away that property. Now the son dies. So what? So why does that undermine his claim? I don't chop it. I mean, let's see what the Gemara says. Gemara says the Kasavri Beit Shammai Shtar Ha'omed Ligvos Kigovlidom. So I'm going to read through the Masechet here, and I'm hoping that the Gemara is going to say something similar to what I said in much more sophisticated language. But then I'm still going to be, even if I succeed, I'm still going to be confused why the Gemara didn't know this. But anyway, because kasavri means like I'm going to be mechadish to you a new principle here. I don't know why you need a new principle. Anyway, let me read this. Achein ain't something motzvudei. Period. They tell me agree. However, nafal abayis amru shabal chol cholek b'nechasov. Right? That's Beit Shammai Shita that Yachloku. Afal pishu safek deim vadai, which again I'm not sure what that means, but let's take it on at blind faith. Umi kevan sheyorshei ha'am enom nechshavim levadai legabi bal chov. Mishum de kasavri Beit Shammai kevan sheyesh biyado shtar ha'omed ligvos, and biyado here I think means the balchov, right? Does that make sense? Sha'omed ligvos hareu kigovlidom. I think pretty similar to what I'm saying. I don't know why the Gemara has to work so hard and use all this sophisticated terminology. Nechshav hadavar ki ilu bal hashtar muchzak b'nechasim. V'kevan she'en yodua mi meitz tchila, sharei ma'av meitz rishon v'yorash b'noas hanechasim zocha balchov miyad b'nechasim. Okay, he calls it Kigavli though. I don't understand why he needs that. I'll be honest with you. Let's say there was no shtar and there were two witnesses. That would be good enough. I don't know why he needs a new halach of shtar, ha'omid, lignos, Kigavli. Shrei im ha'av meis rishon v'yorash b'noas ha'nechasim, Zocha balchov miyad b'nechasim. V'im ben mes tchila v'lo zocha b'nechsei ha'av ha'yorshin nechshav muchzakim. V'ein echad muchzak yosem me'asheni v'aveimamen hamuto b'tzofek chol. Get it? Why does the Gemara need this? Uminat Tamra. Now the Gemara is saying, how do you know that shtar omid lignos kigavli? See, the Gemara, I mean, here's the rub. I mean, the Gemara is not happy with shibudim. That wouldn't register. Shibudim are too abstract. You know, they can't, as you said, Steve, they can't undermine the chazaka of the Av, the Yorshe Av with the death of the son. They need something more solid. That the karka immediately with the death of the father is bechezkas habalchov. Why? Because kigavlito. Shibud is very nice, but it's an abstract kind of legal right. I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't feel it. It's not mamash's thing, and it cannot create a chazaka. And if it cannot create a chazaka, then the father and his yosha become the muvzakim. It ain't something not to about it. But no, there's kigavlito. We're going to upgrade it. Then we learned in the Mishnah in Sota. Wow, we're really branching out of it. So we have a case of kinui and stira. Okay, fine. So then after kinui and stira, we go to the Beis HaMikdash and we have what's called hashkas mei merorim, right? This is hashkas Sota. We're going to check out whether she had this znus or not. You know, anybody who experienced a case of this sort really prays for the Beis HaMikdash to be rebuilt. Those are things that people get away with. Anyway, Mesu Ba'aleim Ad Shalosh Shasim. Not sure why he uses Ba'aleim in plural, but I guess he's talking about any husband who's in that situation, anyone out there. So instead of giving a name in a singular, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, we Ba'aleim. Okay. Now the halacha is based on a pasuk in Parshas Naso. It says "Ve'hevi ha'ich es ishto," that the only way that this whole process of Mei Merorim would operate and go into effect is only "Ve'hevi ha'ich es ishto." He is not alive anymore, so he can't bring his wife to the Beis HaMikdash. So we're left with an absolute suffix because kinui and stira creates a suffix whether she had this nus relationship. And then Afkamina is going to be whether she could collect the ksuba with the death of her husband. Beit Shammai Omrim, no close, ksubason, v'enon, shosam. She collects her ksuba. Beis Hillel Omrim, o shosos, o lo los ksuba. She's guilty until proven innocent. She can't prove herself innocent because her husband is not around. He's gone. She has no rights to the ksuba. So I don't know. Is Beis Hillel operating with the assumption that since there was kinui and stira, we thereby assume that she had znus until she can prove herself, which she cannot do in this case? Or simply Beis Hillel saying it was a suffix. We don't know one way or the other. We don't have any assumptions. 50-50, and she doesn't get ksuba. So why doesn't she get ksuba? Because hamotzi mechavero all of her raya. She comes to the yorshim of the Baal, of her husband, which might be her own children, right? And she says, I want to collect my ksuba. They said, oh, no, you don't have rights to the ksuba. You were mizana. And if it was nus, then you forfeited your rights to the ksuba. You want us to cough up your ksuba? You prove that you aren't mizana. And in a suffix, you have no rights to force us to cough up your ksuba because we have chazaka and hamotzi mecher l'raya. You cannot prove your innocence because the husband died. Counsel in Beit Shammai, and they say no. She collects her ksuba even though she cannot drink and cannot prove her innocence. Why? And the answer is because she's the muksa on the ksuba. Why is she muksa on the ksuba? She's coming to claim the ksuba. I want you to open up your bank account and pay me the 200 subs. No, she's considered muksa because she's holding on to the ksuba. And that means that shtara omed ligmos ki gavri dami. Wow. This is unbelievable. And for some reason, the Gemara is completely disconsidering, I don't know what's the word I want to use here, ignoring the sheep. Everything here is about physical chazakah. And in order to establish physical chazakah, we need to activate a principle called shtar ha'omed ligmos kikavim. All right, I think we'll stop here, even though we're heavy in the middle of a sugya here. But what can you do? I mean, you need another hour or two for this, which we don't have right now. So I'm going to just make a note. Now, where is this Gemara? Because, I have this thing here. We're up to Oshosos. Am I right? All right, so that's for tomorrow. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Exactly. Okay, then, Rabbosai. I wish you a great day. I don't know, we're missing 2 people today, but everybody has their own schedule, and that's what happened. Thank you so much, Rumi.